welcome to this presentation. We're excited to present the Liberation Coffee House to everybody here. So I'm Oonagh Ryan with ORA, and we're going to present the coffee shop part of the project. This is James Galoo, an associate principal and the designer of the project. And also presenting is Nick Penapinto. He's the culinary director over at the Los Angeles LGBT Center, and David Takahashi, who's an associate, and he was the project designer from KFA on the Anita Mae Rosenstein campus. It's a mouthful. And so who's ORA? We're a creative design studio. We're down in the Arts District, just off 3rd Street beside Hauser and Wirth. We have great offices, as you can see. This was us pre-pandemic, and we've just moved back in. James and I are sitting in the office today doing this, and we're excited to be back here. And then this is the team as we worked together over the last year. And so the kind of work that we do is we have an intentionally diverse portfolio. A lot of young firms start out in residential, as did we, and that was sort of where we kicked things off. And over the last few years, we've started to build up a mix of hospitality, creative office, and some adaptive reuse projects as well. And the work sort of all has a common thread. It's very personalized, very thoughtful space, designed for normal people, everyday life, ambitious clients, tight budgets, all the things that us architects love. And so what we want to talk about today is, and sort of the objectives of the conversation that we're going to have with everybody today is, we want to learn a bit about the LGBT Center and the great work that they do, and Nick is going to speak to that. We really want to look at how the power of good design creates community and has a really positive impact on people's lives. We also want to learn how to make the most of limited resources. I feel like that's something that is first and foremost in all of the work that we do. Every project, we never seem to land the project with the budget that is like wide open. And so we're always pushing it to push design on limited resources. And then we also want to sort of like look at how to harness the power of a diverse project team and get the most out of people. Because if you have the people bought into it and everybody's invested, you're going to end up with a better project along the way. And so with that, I'm going to hand the project over to Nick Penapinto. Nick's the director of culinary training and operations at the LGBT Center, and he's going to discuss the center and its history so that everybody understands sort of the big picture and where we're starting out on the project.
Great, thank you, Oonagh, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to learn about our project today. And as Oonagh said, we wanted to start by telling you a little bit about the work we do in our facility and campuses across the Los Angeles area on a daily basis. And the mission of the Los Angeles LGBT Center is to build a world where LGBT people can thrive as healthy, equal, and complete members of society. And we actually are the world's oldest and largest LGBT organization. We were founded in 1969. And since then, we've grown to have 10 locations throughout the area. We have 800 plus staff members, and we have 50,000 individual clients served each month. And so I think the question is, first, where are all those employees and what are the services we're providing? And so one of our biggest areas is our health services department. We're one of the few federally qualified health services in the nation that specialize primarily in the care of LGBT people. Our facility also has a full research team. We have mental health services, addiction recovery services, as well as a full pharmacy. So as you'll see is really the theme in our buildings, as well as our services, we really take a holistic view to making everyone healthy. We also offer robust social services and housing. This is for both youth and seniors. And from the housing side, it's everything from emergency shelter bedding to transitional living programs to long-term affordable housing. We also offer drop-in services for both our youth and seniors, which is everything from a warm meal and a shower to a place to do their laundry. And it includes social programming. So people who are stably housed, who are within the community, from all different income levels who come to socialize as well. Our culture and education program, we have a 200-seat theater, which is right across from the campus we're discussing today. We have several galleries, a full educational programming, including a charter high school, as well as vocational programming, and we even provide support while they're in college. And then one program a lot of people don't know about is we also have our leadership and advocacy, which has a whole legal services team, which helps our members if they need access with citizenship or any legal issues. You'll see in the picture, we have our Out for Safe Schools badge. It's actually a program that has national participation where we train school districts on how to create safe spaces for LGBT youth. And we encourage staff members that are trained to wear those badges. We have a wonderful emerging leaders program, which actually works with LGBT organizations in China. We bring them over twice a year from different groups to talk about everything from fundraising to what social activities are a success. And so it's really the full gamut of services. And then just so as well, as we talk about some of the bigger accomplishments that have happened over the 50 years, I included, this is a very summarized timeline for you here, but you can really see, once again, it's a holistic picture. So it's everything from housing to opening the world's first lesbian health clinic, to the first LGBT organization to receive tax exempt status. And of course, during the AIDS epidemic, the center really responded. We were the first HIV test site in California, and we became the largest in the nation, and then continued that by offering a special care clinic. And now have done a lot of work for Trans Pride with the first Trans Unity Festival and in addressing housing. So it's really a broad range. And kind of like to discuss that because as we celebrated 50 years, we really looked at what does the next 50 years look like? And one of the needs we identified is that we needed a new corporate campus. We were spread out all over Los Angeles, and we realized we really need to start bringing a lot of our services together. So we looked at a way to unite ourselves, as well as how do we really address the need for more affordable housing in our community. So while it took a couple years to build, our project actually started 10 years ago, and the property that you see the main campus built on in this picture was actually purchased in 2014. There were several parcels, but that was the beginning of it. The total project cost was $141 million. And just to give you a little summary, about 78 million was more for the administrative and drop-in social services. And then it was about 63 million for our 3 housing buildings, which are on the main campus as well. And the combined footprint of this campus is more than 3 acres. And one of the things that I think is just really important to highlight is we look at those big numbers, and while there's a lot of county and city support, $55 million of that actually came from within our community from private and foundation donations. And what's so amazing about that is that by the time all those pledges are met, our campus will actually be mortgage free, and we're very close, which means that all the funds that we bring in from that point forward will go directly into our life-saving services. And so with that, I would like to introduce David from KFA, who was essential into making our campus a reality.
Great. Thank you for that introduction, Nick. And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me today. Nick gave a great introduction to the center as an organization, and I just want to dive in a little into the center as a building and as an intergenerational campus. Comprised of 2 phases. Phase 1 is the Anita Mae Rosenstein campus, which is what I'll be speaking on today. And then phase 2 is the 99 unit affordable housing project for seniors and the 25 unit supportive housing for youth. Those will both be finished in 2021. The youth housing actually just opened earlier this year. The first phase of this project was completed in 2019, and I've included a few of the major team players on the left here. So I just want to break down sort of the components of the center as a whole, just so you can start to get a sense of the scale of the project. So starting on the north side of the project, the left side of this image, you have the senior center in red and Pride Hall, which is an event space in orange that sort of encloses the new public plaza. This sits directly across from the existing Village at Edgewood Plaza. In the center of the project is the youth center, which is in turquoise in this image, while the administrative building in purple and the transitional living program and emergency overnight beds are shown in yellow here, and both of those portions front Santa Monica. And then lastly, the Liberation Coffee House that ORA will be talking about today sits at the corner of Santa Monica and McCadden and sort of grounds that portion of the site. You can also see in this image just sort of the location of the new senior housing building, as well as the youth housing building, which sits directly adjacent to the Village at Edgewood Plaza. Keep doing that. Okay. So the center needed to house a multitude of programmatic requirements, and this sort of enabled KFA to break the building up into distinct but related blocks that each sort of had their own unique form and relationship to one another. The outward facing nature of the buildings enabled the center to have multiple entry points along both Santa Monica and McCadden, and sort of ties it to the buildings across the street as well. As I was just saying, the relationship between the programs and sort of the circulation across and through the site was key in laying out each specific part of the project. And really the heart of the center is this new public plaza with Pride Hall and the associated commercial kitchen. It has direct ties to both the senior, youth, and the existing campus components elsewhere on the site. In addition, sustainability of the building, as well as an emphasis on the integration of nature and how to sort of bring the outside in, was key to the project as well. There are 4 internal courtyards that allowed for extensive daylighting and natural ventilation. And this contributes to the building's focus on being healthy for the residents, the staff, and the clients who visit it every day. You can see in the section to the left how the varied forms and punctures in the form of the courtyards open the building up to the outside. And this is an image of one of those courtyards on the right here. And then finally, the skin of the building is an important player in the project's overall design. An intentional mix of curtain wall at the administrative building, Pride Hall, and the senior center in juxtaposition to the clean white plaster walls are used to provide visual access where desired and privacy for staff and clients where necessary. These surfaces also act as a blank slate for the colorful art and the lighting that punctuate the space day and night. Lastly, the anamorphic projections created by the use of fritted and clear glass at the administrative building shown in the center here relate back to the center's logo, contribute to the building's visual interest from multiple points, and further reduces the solar heat gain of the project as a whole. The design of the center sort of shapes and is shaped by the community at large. The evolution of queer identity is expressed in the outward facing nature of the building. This is different than how LGBT centers around the world have been designed in the past. And these are used to both draw people in and further facilitate change. It was key from the outset that the architecture of the space was seen as a celebration of the LGBTQ community and an acknowledgement to the progress that has been made over the last half century. These are just a couple images from the grand opening, and you can see the role that the LGBT Center plays in its community. And then lastly, I just want to touch on how, as a member of the queer community myself, it is not lost on me the impact of working on a project as symbolic as this one, and one that will be used to better the lives of so many in need. You will see later in this presentation the direct impact that the center has as an organization and as a physical building on those who both use its resources and call it home. So I just want to bring Nick back to introduce how the Liberation Coffee House came to be and the center's culinary arts program. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, David. And as David said, I just want to touch base on, we look at the building and being on campus every day, I can really talk about what a difference having a facility like this makes for our community, and how revolutionary it is to find these type of services all wrapped together in one place in Los Angeles. Just to put it in the scope, with our health facility being less than a mile away, it means that a member can see their doctor, pick up a prescription, have lunch, get social services, get medical and housing all in one place. And to not have to take 3 bus trips or be referred to different places really revolutionizes the care we can provide. So just to kind of put a little scope in what we've seen happening over since our campus opened. And so as David said, we finished our campus and we had this very empty corner on our building. And we also realized once it was fully built out what a prominent space this was. And so the question really became, how do we embrace the community, which is the theme of our campus, while leveraging our existing programming? And so already, as part of our social services and our vocational programming, we started a culinary arts program when our new campus opened. This main kitchen is actually located directly behind Pride Hall. And we actually offer an intergenerational job training and food production program. We enroll 100 students each year, and it's a 300-hour program. They go through everything they need to get entry-level jobs. So this means learning the basics. So they're learning their knife skills, they're learning how to work neatly, they're learning how to truss and fabricate a chicken. It's the first time many of them have ever shucked an oyster or eaten an oyster. It's amazing when they actually will take the food and walk through the center. So we have our homeless youth enjoying gougères and oysters. Like, where would you find that? It's a great sight, and they're sharing their passion for food. And so then after that, in the second module, they actually make food for the center, which is a huge thing. And we really see our members come alive because instead of just receiving services, they're instantly giving back. And so we serve 450 meals a day. When we're out of the pandemic, we do that buffet style, which gives all of our members a choice because no one wants to feel like they're getting a handout. And for a lot of our members who are dependent on services, just having a choice if you want your chicken with sauce or not sauce is a huge thing, and the feeling like you have independence and value. And then the final thing we do is our internship and job placement, which is where we work with the local community to help place them in 100-hour internships that we're able to pay for while they're in there, and that hopefully leads to a full-time job. So we have this meal production. We'll eventually be doing catering, and as we're about to talk about, our on-site cafe as well. And so when we decided on that we were going to turn this into a cafe, we identified what our original goals were within the center. And we decided we wanted really a living room for the center and a front door for the neighborhood. This is the first time we would have a space where anyone in the community could just walk in. You didn't have to have a ticket, you didn't have to have an appointment, which was a big change for us. So we really wanted to celebrate diversity and build the community. We wanted to make sure that the design was aligned with the mission of the center. We've never done a retail outlet associated with what do you identify as the brand of the Los Angeles LGBT Center. We also were looking at this new campus and how is it cohesive with the design. And finally, it had to be profitable to help drive revenue for our programming, which is the main point of the cafe, and also convey the high quality food and beverage offerings that we wanted to serve. And so with our 50 years of experience, we know a lot about nonprofit work, but we didn't have the right set of skills to address this challenge. And it's where we really turned on the expertise of ORA on how to transition this empty box into a very active space it is today. And I'll turn it back over to Oonagh and James.
Thanks for the intro, Nick. And I just want to say we were super thrilled that the center approached us to do this project, and we were super excited. So this is sort of where we started, a blank canvas with tons of potential, you know, a glass box that sort of opens up onto Santa Monica Boulevard. But of course, there are constraints that we had to deal with. I think the reflective glass sort of was something that we needed to deal with because we wanted to create a street presence. The harsh glare at an interior from the space with so much glass looking out to busy Santa Monica Boulevard. And then, of course, you know, in the shell, there's services, utilities, there's columns and chases, and all these things that you kind of need to take in consideration when you're starting the design. And then, you know, being over a parking structure, you know, just have, you know, coincidentally, having a bunch of utilities and services right under the space made placing the kitchen a little bit challenging. But with that, as sort of a jumping off point, we really looked at the program, and as Nick mentioned, it's more than just a cafe. It's a pop-up retail space to support the center and the residents in their business efforts. It's an art gallery that celebrates the community and is also an opportunity to hang sort of different art from residents, as an example. And really, it's a meeting space for the neighborhood and for the community at large. And it needed to be something that was flexible enough to where they could have events, hold events there, a variety of sizes. So those were things that we needed to consider when laying out the space. So jumping into our inspiration, I think, when we first started looking at the building, we were really taken by the curved forms and the geometry. Also the quality of light inside the building, is super interesting and something that we admired. And this sort of creates a really strong presence of the building. And we wanted to take all this language and sort of bring it into the cafe to kind of create like a really cohesive integration with the center. But then when we started looking into it a little bit more, we realized that Keith Haring and his art was an inspiration for the forums. And so, that was also inspiring to us. Keith Haring being such an important figure to the LGBTQ community and a pioneering artist, the sweeping lines and the bold use of color was really inspiring to us.
Yeah, we were really drawn to his art, and the center has an amazing collection of Keith Harings that are wonderful.
And then, of course, the pride flag. So it was inspiring to us in many ways, the bold use of color and the simple graphics, the ability for that to embody so much meaning and to become such a powerful symbol was really inspiring. But also the materiality of the flag, the sense of movement and fluidity you get from that. The notion of fluidity was a concept that we explored with Nick. And so, there is definitely parallels with the pride flag, and we use that as a good source of inspiration. But then sort of focusing in on color, we really gravitated towards the warm spectrum of colors in the flag. So, red for life, orange for healing, yellow for sun. It evokes a sense of optimism, and it's really welcoming and warm. And those were all things that we wanted people to feel when they're in the space. But these colors also reminded us of Southern California, almost like a sunset. And then that kind of led us to looking into this idea of creating a gradient of color. We thought that was really interesting, this fluidity between colors. So, how do we achieve that? With material, we thought it was really interesting, this idea of creating that blending through overlap and layers, and then using sheer materials to kind of play with light. And all these things kind of create something that's really dynamic in the space and can kind of transform throughout the day. And we really wanted to achieve that quality somehow. So then with that, analyzing space, looking at the program requirements, looking at the kitchen equipment requirements, and really sort of getting in the details, then we started laying out the space. And this is a sketch, which is our sort of jumping off point for the layout, but you can see the red lines. We're really trying to play with movement and curves, and we wanted to express this in the plan. And so then, this is the resulting layout. And the one thing that we didn't really have many options with was the kitchen, the back of house space. There was so much services and plumbing and HVAC running underneath the floor in the parking garage that the only place we can locate the back of house was in the upper right-hand corner here. But then, what we're left with, sort of organizing the program, we were really strategic. So You know, at the entry from the patio, there's these double doors, and we wanted you to walk through the retail space in order to get to the cafe counter, so that you're engaged with the retail and you're passing by it, and it sort of catches your eye and is sort of part of the experience. And then on the left-hand side of the plan, you know, we really wanted to create a wide variety of seating types that was comfortable for everyone. We wanted everyone to sort of find their own little nook, if you're a group or if you're going solo. So we have this long sort of bench that I'll get into, that sort of starts to create and define separate seating areas within the space. And then at the back of the space is the gallery, and you know, it's seating by day, but all of this can sort of be cleared out and reconfigured for events and sort of different programs that the center has.
And the idea was that by putting the gallery in the back space, that you're almost creating like what in a restaurant could be a private dining room. The fabric panels could move across and close it down, and that you could take a meeting and feel connected to the cafe, but still have some privacy.
Yeah. So, you know, sort of breaking down, we like to think, I don't know, we usually approach things as a kit of parts. And so this is our concept diagram. And each one of these design elements, you know, they lend itself to the overall concept, but they also address functional and practical needs. So they're doing double duty.
Yeah, and I find when you're working within budget constraints that, you know, the things that will get value engineered really quickly are the things that are just pretty. If they're pretty and functional, it's really hard to get rid of them. And so you tend to be able to get them into the finish line.
Okay, so then, yeah, I mean, talking about the first one, the curved planes, and as I spoke to our inspiration with Keith Haring and the building forms, you know, wanting to sort of draw people in was something that we thought was really important. But, you know, also it's a strategy to hide the equipment, the columns, the shafts, the utilities, and also to kind of to create little nooks for people behind the counter to shield equipment and stuff like that. So these curved walls are part of the design concept, but they're also functional in sort of being able to knit and tie all these elements together to create something that feels really cohesive. But ultimately, you know, it's paint, it's studs, it's drywall, and you create a lot of design value with these really simple materials, and the paint just really elevates it. So again, that kind of speaks to trying to achieve this high design value on a limited budget. And this is sort of just one example. But then getting up to the ceiling, it's kind of a similar condition where we have HVAC, we have services, we have structure, we have all these things that we need to conceal. And instead of just dropping, you know, a regular soffit on it, we saw it as a design opportunity to start carving out the soffit to play with the curvature of the walls, but also to define spaces within the larger open space, to sort of break things up a bit and create these different zones. And then of course the fabric panels. So this was really important to the project. And you know, functionally what they do is they soften views out. The views, you know, we like the movement and the activity being on such a busy street, but we wanted to soften that experience a little bit, but then also to shield from glare. And so, you know, these fabric panels are doing that, but they're also tied into the concept itself. And so they're all of varied heights, they're overlapping, and we chose a bunch of different color fabrics and really took a lot of time to try to understand what the properties were to create this gradient of color that links the walls together and envelops the entire space with color.
And when you're working, again, I'm often the cost policeman on projects. And when you're working on a budget and you're trying to come up with ideas for what the panel, when James was trying to come up with ideas for what the project or the panels should be, we were working with the general contractor and going back and forth and trying to understand costs. And eventually we got to the point where it became about getting creative if we were going to keep this move in the project. And James sort of took it on as a bit of an art project. And he ended up working with the center, the handyman to install, and a local drapery company to sort of pull things together, and spent a lot of time looking for fabrics that were cost effective and would be able to be layered over each other correctly to create that gradient effect that he was looking for. And in the end, we were able to make this happen with fairly limited material and fabrication costs. And it did create a great, like one of the major moves in the project, and added a lot of design value.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's just rolls of fabric, and, you know, playing around and going there on site and sort of testing things out on the fly. It was pretty organic process.
Yeah.
And we didn't really know going into it, you know, there's some unknowns, like, is this going to work? But, you know, we're really happy that we took it on and we really pushed it, because it did become such a major design element. And then, you know, sort of talking about budget again, you know, we really wanted to have a tile counter, like,
Make a statement with the counter.
Yeah.
Make it graphic.
yeah. And so it's these tiled forms that are in the space. And so, you know, but with the budget, we ended up using the attic stock tile that was left over from the campus, which were used for the restrooms, which sort of allowed us to have a little bit of fun with it and to pay really close attention to the layout and details and corner transitions and stuff like that. So with a little bit of a custom color epoxy grout, we really elevated, you know, this really simple subway tile, and working with people who really cared about those transitions in the layout and really worked with us to create something that was clean. You know, we're able to create something special with little upfront costs, really. And then the bench. This was definitely, you know, this was part of the concept. We wanted almost like a spine that ran through the space that kind of connected front to back. And so we wanted to keep things flexible enough to where things could be reconfigured, but we did want to create a variety of seating zones within the larger space. And so, you know, playing off the curved walls and the curved ceilings, we created this curved bench, which kind of creates these separate areas. But it's flexible and adaptable enough to where you can open things up and still have that flexibility in use. But the material, it's really warm, and it sort of balances out the bright colors that we used, and brings in a little bit of nature.
And again, if you can imagine that space in gallery mode or in party mode, and you scrape all the furniture out of it, or it's a retail pop-up store at Christmas where all where the community comes together to showcase things that they make and perhaps sell them, like that bench can function in ways other than seating too.
Yeah, exactly. But ultimately, I mean, we wouldn't have been able, I sort of touched on this on the previous slides, but we wouldn't have been able to do this without a really diverse, passionate, and wonderful team. It really does take a village. And, you know, at Universal Metro, we worked with Scott, and he was the one that produced us endless samples of grout colors to get just the right color.
Yeah, I nearly sent him over the edge looking for some cherry color grout.
And then Daystar Millwork, Christine was really amazing in working through the details with us to make that curved bench happen. And, you know, it's not the most simple bench. Like, it did take a lot of work to get it to look really clean and monolithic looking. And then of course, Breesis Drapery, Augustin and Anna, they were just incredible. And I think you really see their passion and attention to detail in the panels. Each one is unique. The stitching is beautiful, and they really worked with us to figure out what the method of attachment was up to the ceiling. And yeah, they helped the space come together. And then, you know, working with the center, you know, coordinating the art, hanging the panels, potting the plants, they did all those they worked with us to produce all those details that really helped things come together.
Like the center became people that sort of, when you pull these small hospitality projects together and you've got a contractor, but yet you have all these little things that don't fall into the construction documents, finding people and resources at the 11th and a half hour to pull these things together to make the space really knit and look tight is incredibly difficult on limited resources. And it was such a blessing. It was amazing having these people who were really excited to work with us and had a good time. We were all out there putting all this stuff together with them, and we had a lot of fun working with everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, the contractors were like Swinnerton and their team was really amazing. They were diligent and focused from the beginning to the end, and just that consistency and attention to detail and patience with everyone on the team.
With us.
Really, it went a long way, and we're just so thankful to have been able to work with them to make this happen.
So picking up on the concepts that James discussed, we work pretty hard to define a really considered materials palette, because we were playing with a lot of different shades. There's a lot of beautiful, expensive materials out there, and it was like, how do we take these colors and with a budget being the key driver, sort of test options and make sure we can get it to come together. So again, like James said, we ran many scenarios for many of these materials by the general contractor to test for viability within the budget, and to make sure that when we put them together in the construction documents that we'd be able to deliver the concept. And so it was great. Once this landed, everybody was really excited about it. Like, we had an ambitious client, we had a creative client, and I feel like when we were working on this material palette here, I was a little nervous of it. It's really bright. And we went over there and gave the presentation, and it was, they loved the colors. They were really receptive to the ideas and thought process behind them. And so once they landed, we felt it was really important to reinforce the concept through furnishings as well. And so the pink, the areas on the plan that are colored in pink are what we're going to call the perimeter color strategy, and picking up on the color gradients that James had sort of really carefully considered. When I layered in over James's work to start selecting furniture, we really felt it was important to build upon that, and that it reinforced the color story that he had started. James already discussed, that the coffee shop needed to be approachable for multi-generational folks. And so picking the furniture, we sat in all of it, we test drove it, we wanted to make sure you could lift it, you could move it, that it was comfortable, that it had soft edges, that the patio stuff outside could easily be picked up and brought in at night. And so it needed to be lightweight and durable. Certain pieces need to be able to take a beating, and other pieces just needed to be really pretty. And so most of all, though, it needed to be cost effective. And we needed to be able to pick a couple of key things that gave you a big statement and give you some bang for your dollar. And so the perimeter, once we sort of arrived on the scenario for the perimeter furniture, then for the seating areas and the gallery areas, we wanted to create sort of something a little different. We didn't want to just make a color explosion throughout the whole space, because we felt like it would start to take away from the perimeter concept. And so, because the coffee shop is ultimately a safe community space, we felt like it was important to capture the spirit of nature and wellness in these pieces. And so we went back to the pride flag again, and green in the pride flag is associated with nature. So nature, balance, wellness, and the green wood tones in these pieces, we found they balanced out the brighter colors. They're sort of at opposite ends of the color wheel. And then by layering in plants, thank you, Nick. I mean, Nick was amazing. He went out he was the plant guy. He went out and picked everything, figured out the pots, got them all potted. But once the plants went in, they were like the final layer that brought the space together. And then even for a small space like this, taking on a furniture package for a smaller firm it's a lot of work. And so we were smart enough to bring in Pacific Office Interiors into the mix, and they helped us, figure out budget. They helped us pull some selections together. We had a lot of initial thoughts. We had some missing pieces that they were able to look further than our knowledge base for. And then they helped us with procurement and installation. And so finding, you may not have all the resources in-house, but using resources like Pacific Office Interiors to help expand on the skills that you bring to the client is really important.
Yeah. And just to chime in on the client part, all of this wouldn't have been possible if the center really trusted us and our opinions and what we brought to the table. And so they trusted us, and we were able to work with them in a way where we were able to really deliver and execute a pretty thorough concept because of that trusting relationship that we had with them.
Absolutely. So going back to the art gallery, we didn't want to open up with empty walls. And we realized once we had been, visiting the center and in the new campus, there was a lot of documentation of the 50 years of advancement within the LGBT community that Nick went through with you at the beginning of the presentation. But we found they had an amazing archive of all these beautiful drawings and photographs that showcase the history and the community. And so we decided to just go simple with it, like pick some really strong images and use black and white as a counterpart to the color in the space, and just frame them simply and let that be sort of the inaugural exhibit in the gallery. The one in the center, which is the Liberation House photograph, really was the inspiration for the cafe name, and it's front and center on the red wall for good reason. And Nick, if you can chime in and just give everyone sort of a little bit of backstory on that, I think it's really interesting. I was fascinated by it when you told us.
Sure, and we really struggled on the right name for our cafe and something that celebrated our 50 years. And we were looking through the archives photos, and we actually came across the photo you see in the middle of the screen, which says Liberation House on it. And as you saw on the first slide, these were actually how the center started back in 1969. And they were basically houses owned by members of the community where people could rent a room for $1.50 a night. And it grew from one house to two house to three house. And soon everyone who actually worked for the center, once they could have volunteers, I guess you would actually call them, they realized that, hey, these members need social services, they need access to healthcare, they need more help than just a room. And that's kind of how the entire center grew into what we are today. And so when we came across this picture, we thought, what a better way to pay homage to our past while celebrating what this new building can be for our future.
Yeah, it was really inspirational when we heard the backstory on this. It's a really cool photograph, and I love it in the middle of the space. And so the project doesn't end when the punch list is finished and when Nick and his team takes things over. And so usually we find projects have a whole other life post occupancy. And I wanted to touch base a little bit on marketing, because I think this project. We've much like how we managed to have a great synergy with the team during the design process. It's had a particularly good synergy post occupancy, and so as small businesses, and Liberation Coffee House is a small business, ORA is a small business. You have limited marketing and PR budgets, and we do a lot of what James and I call guerrilla marketing. It's stuff on the fly, and you take what you can when you can get it. And so what we did in this instance is we got together as a team. So ourselves and the LGBT Center, Liberation Coffee House, and Swinnerton. And there's a bunch of expertise, deep expertise, and a much broader network between everybody's group. And we got together, and what we decided to do was, sorry, my slide moved. We decided to get together and and craft the story together so that there was a shared story and a common story for the project, so that any one of us could take it and run with it. We also invested in good photography, and I've found since since we started our business that investing in photography is key. You guys have probably seen this image over the course of the last year. Eric Stoudemire is our photographer, and he takes stunning photographs, and it's really the key to the success of the past life of the project. It allows us to do things like submit for awards. We get to bring it out to media outlets, and then we have a built-in database for social media. And social media is, it's free. You just have to have time to do it. But having the photography and then having the team sort of all aligned with how you're going to put it out within social media, the correct hashtags and all of that stuff, it allows you to broaden the reach and increasing the project and brand awareness. And it's a win-win for everybody. And next slide. Sorry, can you hit the next one? Sorry, I'm not, one sec.
Oh, Nick, why don't?
Yeah, sure.
So, okay,
actually,
yeah, and then just sort of transitioning to Nick, the branding efforts on his part was, really amazing. And
Nick, do you want to talk to this one?
Sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think I just wanted to touch base on, kind of going back a bit before I jump into this, just about, we teach in our culinary program that the two most ingredients you can put into your food are love and pride. And when Oonagh and James talked about the creation of the cafe, I think, they were talking about how we all work together so symbiotically. And I think that's really what made the project so successful. It was their attention to detail and their honest, genuine enthusiasm about the project that when people walk in, you can't help but feel that love and pride. And I don't think certainly they wouldn't have felt that way if you were engaged. So I think it ties just back into what we want people to feel when they put the food in their mouth from our cafe, or the people getting our services. It all is so tied in together. And, on their part, they talk about, being organized and helping with the art, but I don't even think they go into detail. Like, we decided that we would do the art, and they didn't just say, okay, you'll take care of the pictures. Like, they meticulously planned the detail of the framing, and then James sent a meticulous detail of where every picture would go to the inch, and came to double check our measurements before we hung. So they went way beyond what their scope of responsibility was to make sure that the end product, that the attention to detail went everywhere. So we really appreciate that. But then, to go back to on the marketing, we certainly appreciate all of the support that we could never afford as a small business. And so I just wanted to show you this slide, which talks about how we actually developed the logo after the space was developed. We used the color palette that was inspiring us in our logo, which actually is a play off the rainbow. And this is kind of a fun play of imagining a coffee ring when you would pick up your cup. So that's why it's a little bit, looks like it has a slight drip to it. And we add the Los Angeles LGBT Center over top of that, just to pay a nod back to our brand. We incorporate that back into our coffee cup logo. And I think what's fun, as Oonagh said about this grout in the tiling, we actually use that kind of to help portray our brand. So when you see our social media images of our food, we incorporate that tile to tie it back into the cafe. So really about how this design can influence our whole identity. And then we also wanted to start talking about how you can see Andrew in the middle. He's a senior graduate of our program. He now makes all the food in the cafe. He takes a lot of pride in what he does. And Headley and Bennett actually created an apron that they're selling right now, and all the percentage of the proceeds go back to us. But you can see how our cafe kind of inspired their apron. They made it for us to be able to wear as a uniform as well, which is pretty incredible. And then we just have two more slides here. I'll just move this forward for you. And one of the things that we were excited about as well, as Oonagh said, we have a very limited marketing budget. And so Postmates actually approached us as well and mentioned they would love to do a promotion to talk about Cooper's Donuts, which was actually an uprising that happened prior to Stonewall, where the police were targeting trans people who are patrons of a cafe, and members actually threw coffee cups and donuts at them. So Postmates was telling the story during Pride, but you can see in the photos they did to promote, we actually sold the donuts through the cafe, sorry, just to tie it back. But I think what's so fascinating is you can see how even with Postmates immense marketing budget. They actually picked our color palette from a lot of things you see in the cafe with that signature pink to help tie in our branding.
Well, we just want to say, yeah, thank you to everyone who attended, and yeah, for Nick and David be able to join us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys so much. This has been really amazing. I am just going to stop your sharing so we can see all your lovely faces on the screen together.
Oh, lots of people.
Yeah, lots of people here. Thanks for being here, everyone. But just really big thank you to ORA, to Oonagh and James, to Nick and David, the Coffee House, KFA, and the LGBT Center. So please put your questions in the chat. This is just a beautiful project inside and out. It's amazing to see what architecture can really do for communities. And it honestly, guys, this is like the best part of my job, is like just to see the work that you guys do. So if we have any questions in the chat, please put them in there. I also wanted to mention that we do have a town hall coming up. Hold on one second, because I want to say it correctly. The LGBTQIA+ town hall, which is coming up next Wednesday. This is Pride Month. And just want to say happy Pride Month to everybody. But Jessica put the registration link in the chat, so please join us. It should be a really great conversation. I know it always takes a little bit of time to get questions to get going. So when we do have them in here, I will ask you to talk. And Tibby is very good about putting on comments. Tibby, do you want to unmute yourself and see your comment to the group?
Hi. I was caught off guard when you
I'm
call
sorry.
on me. I'm just putting in a comment. No, I didn't realize that the center did all of it that it does. A couple of years ago, I was walking out of my door to go to work, and really surprised this young man was like literally at the doorstep, like I almost hit him with the door, and he was cowering. And first he scared me because I didn't expect to find a person literally outside my door. And then I realized as he walked off and walked away that he was my daughter's age, and he was super, and he was obviously also on some sort of drug. Something was not quite right. And then later on, my husband, I had to go, but my husband, took out some food to him and kind of talked to him and discovered his story. And it was similar to Tryon's. He had come out to his family, and his family kicked him out. And he was not from LA originally. He was from somewhere else. And it was just heartbreaking. And, I don't know whatever happened to this young man. We didn't see him again after that. I kind of kept my eye out. I wish now that I'd known that. How does one, like if you come across someone like this, how does one direct them? Is there a helpline? Is there like a line I could have called and said, hey, there's a young man who needs help? And I didn't know that his situation when I first was confronted by him on my doorstep, but later we found out more about his story, and it would have been great to have been able to call a service like this and say, there's a young man who needs help.
Yeah, no, it's great. We have a full suite on our website of services and help numbers as well. We always answer our door 24 hours a day with security as well, to try to meet people where they are. And I think it's such a good, just like Tryon's story, I think we see so much positive portrayal of LGBT and so much in the media and in shows now, but it's hard to believe that people still would kick out their own family members. Thank you for your comment. And I think that's one of the things we also hope with this cafe and the project is, it also just creates another piece for the community, for yourself to learn about where people can go and about, and it all starts with your daily cup of coffee, which is a different way for us to tell about our mission and what we do.
Thanks for sharing that, Tibby. I'm sure other people have questions. One question I have for you guys, you talked a lot about the smaller budget that you had. And I just wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on how a smaller budget might lead to inspiration You know, how some people can take an old dresser and turn it into a dollhouse.
I mean, we say here all the time, paint's your best friend. And we use paint to good effect on, I would say, many of our projects. It's funny because I feel like both of us are kind of lean towards more neutral colors in our personal lives, but we're not afraid to try stuff on. It's just paint. So we tend to just try things on and see if they stick, and it sparks a conversation. Like, throw good ideas out on the table, see where they come from, and engage in a conversation. And I find that often, sometimes, like, really creative solutions come out of not having a lot of resources.
Yeah, it's a constraint. And I feel like oftentimes the more constraints you have, the more creative you need to be. And honestly, the better the project. And so it's just being really resourceful with what you have and what you can use. And ultimately, I feel like that ends in something even more creative than if you had an unlimited budget.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So we have a good question from Martin Hernandez. Martin, can you unmute yourself and ask a question to the group? Otherwise, I'll read it for you.
Sure, no
There you
problem.
go. Thank you.
I'm just thinking of all of the opportunities for folks that are interested in kind of continuing their career in food service beyond the Liberation Coffee House. And I'm just wondering if businesses in the area have kind of taken notice of what's going on and wanting to continue to work with participants after they've learned so many things at the coffee house. I know that job training in restaurants can be a little difficult, so just curious if you could speak to that.
For sure, yeah, we actually have about 30 community partners now that work with us on our internship sites and employment. So most of our students actually find employment outside of the center. Chef Susan Feniger was actually an inspiration for the program. She did a lot of our original fundraising and mentorship. She's very actively involved. So both Socolo and Border Grill host our interns, but we have community members all over, everything from people at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. We have, we're trying to form a partnership with Kaiser. We just formed a partnership yesterday with Four Seasons Hotels. Every Table, which is another kitchen that helps do pricing based on the location they're in, is working with us as well. So it's kind of a really broad spectrum. And we tell our students, don't think of it just as, I'm going to work in a kitchen. You can really take it anywhere. So for example, one of our students is now working at Cedars-Sinai Hospital developing food while she works on things she needs for pre-med. So we really try to tell people that it's not just about working in a kitchen, that you can really take these life skills and go wherever you want.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Nick.
And if you're hungry, you can order on Postmates right now.
That's great to hear.
We've had the opportunity to try the food, and it's delicious.
It's delicious.
I highly encourage. Nick and his team really care about the menu. I think in the same way that we put the care into the project, and I feel like it shows in the food, and it's delicious. It's well worth stopping by.
Mm-hmm.
And they make a mean cup of coffee too.
Mm-hmm. And David, can you just remind us the new portion of the center, is that opened?
Yeah, so the youth housing portion, which is 25 units of supportive housing for the youth, that portion has already opened earlier this year. And then the senior housing portion, which is another 99 units, that's scheduled to open later this year. It's ending construction now.
And are there any plans for any additional units or any other storefronts, like since this has been so successful?
Not that I'm aware of. Nick might know of secret plans in the works.
Yeah, not at the moment. We're just getting ready to move into our senior housing, which is just getting ready to be cleared for occupancy. But we are looking at doing some potential coffee carts for Liberation Coffee House in the area. But our next big project is to launch catering. As David said, we have Pride Hall, which can seat 200 people. And we have an amazing rooftop space as well. So that'll be our next endeavor from a social enterprise standpoint. Right now, we're more just focused on how do we bring people back after the pandemic. We never closed, but now it's more about how do we slowly bring back the community and actually utilizing every part of this campus.
Yeah, well, we would love to continue to work with you guys once things are back in person. If we can bring anything to you guys and events-wise programming, definitely here to help you, support you through this. So I think that's it. We're out of time. We had some good questions. Just wanted to thank all of you.